Lune Expedition 33 is an absolute powerhouse, folks. I'm going to go through today how I think is best to use her, some of the weapons you might need, and some of the skills that are going to give you the best out of her in all stages of the game, from the early, mid, to late game. Now, first things first, let's just talk about the skills. There isn't much for me to talk about this. There isn't much for me to go through. She has, for me, she's a one-trick pony. That's how I use her. You might use her differently. She has the ability, using stains and different elements, to be able to use different kind of skills, whether it be lightning, fire, ice, earth. I mean, she could do a lot of damage, but none of that really matters to me apart from grabbing these three skills right here. These are the three skills that I use repeatedly and consistently to do the most damage throughout my entire time using her in the game. I know that might dilute the idea of Lune because she does have a lot that she can do, but I've built her in order for her to do a lot of damage, and that's why I go for these skills. You're going to start really with these two skill trees. I always go down this line. I mainly do that because I really like Thunderfall. I feel like it's a really good skill for you to have early on in the game. Electrify I've never actually used, and then I make my way down for these skills. I think this costs you between 12 and 14 points in total, so this is actually something that you can achieve really, really early in the game. Now, it won't work how maybe you want it to do in the early game, but you're going to be able to pick up, this is the trifecta for me, Elemental Trick, which I'll show you what that does, and Mayhem. So I think the best way for us to do this is I'll show you how you should do this in the early game, and potentially the weapon you want to use as soon as you get it in the early game. Now, when you head into your battle, this is kind of what you're going to try and do. This is what you're going to try and achieve. You can see the stains. I want to fill them as quickly as possible. Now, this would be my go-to routine if you have no weapon that's going to give you stains. So basically, you're going to go Elemental Trick, and after Elemental Trick, you're going to do some damage that gives you stains. Now, here's a good point. Now, normally I do hit crits, but I don't have the highest of crits. It's only crits that are going to give me the stains. Now, what happens with Elemental Trick is it will actually cycle through to give me every single stain, which then is going to allow me to do the Elemental Genesis. But you need one of each stain. So you need one of earth, one of ice, one of lightning, and one of fire. I don't have that, but we do have Mayhem. But as you can see, I only have 3 stains. That is where this weapon comes in extremely handy, because I'm a pop one shot and bang. I then gain a stain from shooting the shot. And that in the early game is what's huge, because I'm not really trying to get Elemental Genesis. When you do get that quad of crits and you get one of each stain, it's a great feeling to get to use Elemental Genesis. But really in the early game, I'm just trying to get Mayhem, because Mayhem is extremely strong in the early game and only costs 3 AP. AP is pretty much a luxury in the early game. I'm going to cast Mayhem here. I think this might kill him. We will see, but it's going to do a whole lot of damage, people. So I didn't even get every single hit there off on him, and it killed him. So for the early game, Mayhem is actually what you're going to be using more than anything. It's not going to be the Genesis. It's going to be Mayhem. But having this weapon in the early game is going to be really important. Now, you do get this weapon really early on. I can't remember what you get it from, but I got it in the first act. So that is early on. And basically at level 4, it generates a random stain. I know I only had this between level 4 and 10. That's why I know you get this so early on. So you're going to get this weapon. That doesn't have a lot of power, but it doesn't matter. You're purely using this weapon to generate the random stains. When you get it to level 10, though, you do get an AP every time a stain's consumed. So it kind of starts that AP farm where you're going to constantly have AP in order to use either Mayhem or Elemental Genesis. But regardless, in the early game, sometimes I didn't even use Elemental Trick because I knew my crit rate was so low. I would just shoot 4 times and then be able to use Mayhem. And that worked out for me like a hell of a lot. I was breezing through the early game with Lune just doing just absolute carnage. Sometimes you will roll really lucky with your shots and you will get the ability to do Genesis, but AP's like a luxury at that point in the early game. So yeah, I mean, just having this to generate the stains is going to do you really well in the early game. In fact, I carried this weapon all the way to level 19 because I used this weapon until I got the weapon we now use towards the end of the game. I got the Kralum. Is it the Kralum? I don't know what you actually call this, but basically it's 100% critical chance when 4 stains are active. So basically when you do Mayhem or Genesis, you are guaranteed crits on every one of those hits. They hit big. 20% increased damage for each consecutive turn without taking damage. That doesn't really apply that much, but critical hits apply burn as well. So I'm causing a lot of burn, especially if Lune goes first. She can then be a really good conduit for Mael, who, if you don't have her sword, is going to have to use a skill to get into Virtuoso. If you've already got the enemy on fire, that's going to help you massively. This weapon is definitely what I would go to. I don't shoot any shots now. I go straight for Elemental Trick because I have much higher crit rate than I used to do. But let's see how that works now with this weapon, doing the Elemental Trick on a bit of a more difficult enemy. Honestly, I'm going to tell you, you melt enemy. Now, when finding this enemy, I'm going to try my damned best to avoid all spoilers, because if you're watching this and you're in the early game, you already know that. Just go and get those skills. It doesn't particularly matter how you spec into Lune. From my perspective, those skills will carry you in the early game. We'll look at how we spec into her later, but if you was here for the early game build, probably want to leave now, because I want to avoid as many spoilers as humanly possible, like the fact that I can fly now with SKA. So I'm just gonna go and do the first stage of the tower, you know, our fun little end game loop. I'm just going to do the first stage and show off, you know, kind of what she can do. Because I would definitely say that this is a simple but heavily effective, you know, kind of build. So hopefully I'm going to build up every single stack. That is exactly what I do. That is perfect. So now we are lined up for Elemental Genesis. And, oh, God, I think we're going to melt everyone. I think we're going to melt everyone here. This is only floor 1. I don't want to do too far. I don't want to ruin things by my big head being in the way. So I'm going to come down here right now, and we're going to use all of these stains to just absolutely destroy all of these enemies, because Elemental Genesis does 8 hits to every enemy. Now, all of these hits are going to be crits because we have 4 stains. So all of these hits are going to be crits. And we're going to get a ton of AP back as well. I've got to say that, but I don't... Yeah, that's... Yeah, melted. Absolutely melted. I'm only level 60. Do you know what? We're going to do one more. We're going to do one more floor, because they get more difficult and more difficult. And we've got a flying enemy this time as well. Now, we kick it off using Elemental Trick, hopefully getting all crits, as you would expect. And then, do we get all the crits? This is the next level up. So this is considered a challenge you should be able to do at this stage after you finish the second act. But usually beyond this floor, people say you can't. But we're going to go straight into Elemental Genesis. We're going to see if just with Lune's turn I can wipe out the entire board here. And of course I do. I didn't even need the final hit. 129,000 on just that one enemy. So you can already see, I don't know how damn good she's going to be when we get her to level 90. I'm actually pretty scared of how good she's going to be when I get her to level 90. But I would never not have her in my party again. She's not there to block damage. She's squishy. She dies very easy. Like, very, very easy. But my God, is it just... That's all you need. And you're going to have AP out your ass at this point. I'll go over the attributes. This is my personal preference. Spec into whatever is best for the weapon if you're using this weapon that I've got right now. But you still need some crit. You see my crits at 61. I don't always get it. I don't always get the Elemental Trick to pop the way I want it to do. I need to get the crit to 100%. That's probably going to be the next thing that I try and achieve with this build with Lune, is get your crit to 100%, or at least damn near, you know, near 100%. But obviously we've still got 40 levels to go, so there's plenty of points to put into this build and plenty of points to put into luck. So I'm sure when we get to the max level, like, I'm gonna have no issues with that. I think when we look at her crit against other characters that I'm using, and her speed as well, that's another big thing I would say. I use Lune first. She does the bulk of the damage. She can wipe if you're fighting a boss and there's other enemies in there as well. She can wipe some of those smaller enemies off of the plane, so you don't have to really deal with them. Like, all in all, she is just an absolute beast, and I love using her. I don't use CL anymore. I'm going to keep working on her and getting a better build, but Lune for me at this current stage is just that Elemental Genesis, because it hits everybody as well 8 times. Every single one's a crit. because of the weapon. Oh, honestly, she's absolutely insane. She's carrying me right now through the end game, and I am absolutely loving it. Now, just in case people are wondering, I will go through the Pictos. I'm going to say this again. I think this is one of the few builds that the Pictos don't really matter anywhere near as much. I'm using the Perilous Parry, which gives me more speed and crit rate. Again, crit rate's important. I'm currently using Greater Slow for the defense and speed, but if I get a Picto here that gives me, you know, way more crit, I'm probably like, wait, it needs to be way more. So maybe like Dead Energy 1, which I've currently got on Verso. I'm gonna go for it. Anything here that's gonna give you like a substantial crit boost, it's going to be really important to you. So I would definitely say, if you've got them, look at them. Like 1 AP on hitting an enemy's weakness once per turn. That's not bad. 17% crit. The 3 Pictos I've found that you put in this little section here, they tend to just, you're going off your stats at this point, if I'm being honest with you. Like, there's no world that you should not use Cheetah at any point. I'm using it on her for the 400 speed. But at this point, you literally don't even look at what it gives you, because if it's really that good, you're going to use your Luminous and you're going to put it in here. But I will just go through real quick and just show you kind of what I've got on here. We've got stuff that's going to give me more AP because she needs a lot of AP to function. But beyond that, it's not insane. I don't tend to have anything crazy on there apart from Cheetah. You know, Roulette is one that at this stage I'm thinking about taking off. I don't think it really works for Lune. It works really well in the early game, but every hit has a 50% chance to deal either 50% or 200%. Yeah, the 200% is great, but if I'm hitting crit guarantee every single time, I don't really need that on anymore, so I'm going to take that off. But again, it doesn't really... I'm going to take Dead Energy, actually. It doesn't really matter. Oh, no, I've got Dead Energy too, anyway. And they don't stack as far as I'm aware. Do they stack? Let me know if you've been playing a lot and these actually stack. Because if they do, that's 6 AP on a kill. That is absolutely insane. But no, that's going to be it. They're the Pictos. Pick what you want, in my opinion. Just... crit and speed is going to be really good for it. Crit is the be-all and end-all, especially in the early game, because you're going to find it far more difficult to have crit on Lune. But doing these things genuinely will carry you, if not even enhance you massively when you get to the end game. I wanted to show a clip just really quickly of the genuinely crazy amount of damage this does when we come up against a boss. Honestly, this is just absolutely insane. It shreds. Like, we nearly kill this boss. This is towards, I feel like towards the end game as I'm starting to explore stuff. But this is what I'm saying, like up to 1 million damage plus at points. And we're still like 60, 61. She's just going to get better and better the more and more we pump into those stats. But there's no better feeling than seeing her just decimate a big boss's health bar. There just isn't. But that's going to be it. That's going to be it. First video on the channel to do with Expedition 33. We've got a lot coming. I've fallen in love with this game. When you hit 30s and you're playing games to the level of addiction that I've had with this game over the last couple of weeks since launch, it's good. It's a good feeling to be at this point. Again, thank you very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, please smash subscribe. I hope to see you in another one. Take it easy. Take care of yourselves. Ta-da.